Welcome back to another episode with Behind the Podcast. And Michael, this is our second video where we're really talking about what happened when we shot these podcasts, and we're kind of giving some of the behind the scenes aspects of it. And the one that we just released is called "Don't Be a Lone Wolf." And this one was a story both of us were very familiar with, but it's a tough one because it's a story about someone who went out and trusted a third party and really got themselves involved in a typical transaction they thought was pretty normal. And because of all the healthcare compliance that comes along with it, it actually ended up being almost a disaster. Or actually, it wasn't almost, it became a huge disaster, as we explained in the podcast. But I mean, that's just the kind of background of the lone wolf. Maybe, Michael, you had some fun takeaways from our podcast.
Yeah, I mean, of course, for our members only, we just, kind of share some funny thoughts that and things that we observed going through this. And it's funny because this story reminds me of our client. Remind me, Brad, what was his code name in the episode?
We call them
Dr. Bear?
Dr. Bear.
Yes. So Dr. Bear, as he's called in the episode, it reminds me of him, and that always takes me back in 2005, 2006, when Brad and I joined together at our old firm, because Dr. Bear was kind of our first client that came in the door the day that Brad moved back from Louisiana into Dallas and joined up at our office, and so. He is a big reason why, our practice was immediately even busier than it was when Brad and I joined together. And so I always just have that special place in my heart for Dr. Bear.
He's a good guy, no doubt about that. And I think the last thing is some takeaways we can for those who've heard the podcast. I mean, one of the reasons why we call it "Don't Be a Lone Wolf" is what we try to explain to all our clients is that number one is compliance is difficult as it is, and if you're trying to do it by yourself, that's a recipe for disaster. So don't be out there by yourself. But Michael, you and I were actually talking offline and some other takeaways that we thought we talked about in the podcast, but maybe something else to add in besides the compliance piece.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talk about in that episode is number one, that Dr. Bear, as he's called in the episode, trusted a third-party marketing company that put up a website that was advertising medical services, and our client had no idea about it. He got in big trouble almost got in big trouble with the medical board. We were able to defend him successfully, but it just raises a broader question for all of our members, or broader thought. And that is understanding that you're going to interact with people in industry and other kind of business providers like marketing companies and management companies. And for the most part, they do not understand how medical practices are regulated. And so while this podcast episode was about some bad actors, there's a lot of really good people out there who just don't know. And we see risk that happens on a daily basis with practices because you just kind of discover whether it's an advertising thing or here promote your business with this extra advertising because you buy so much of our product. There's risk that goes with all of these things that you have to work through, whether it's medical board level or state or federal laws.
Absolutely, and that's the tough part. And again, hence the title: "Don't be a lone wolf. Don't try to do this on your own." Hopefully, you guys have already listened to it. But if you're not, please listen to the podcast. It is our second official podcast, although it is our third episode because the first one was with Alex Tiersch. If you haven't listened to that one too, but thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to giving you some more additional details with other podcasts as we release them.